Angeba Sojola here. One of the most potent game changers in South Africa, particularly in regards to unemployment, inequality, and poverty, right, is a natural resource that is found particularly under the Karoo Basin. Now, the Karoo Basin spreads across most of South Africa, right? But there are certain places that these resources can be found, particularly in Eastern Cape, Western Cape, Northern Cape, and North Free State, right? This resource is basically known as Shale gas, right? Now, in 90, before 2010, right, a number of petroleum scientists and engineers from the States came around South Africa to check its potential of supplying energy to the United States for its own um, energy security. Now, by the time those petroleum scientists and engineers left, right, they actually announced that there is a possible 485 trillion cubic feet available in the Karoo, right? Particularly the whole of South Africa, right? But there has been a number of revisions on this basic number, right? There was another revision basically saying that the technically recoverable shale gas, right, can be about 390 cubic trillion cubic feet, right? Now, the South African Petroleum Agency, basically ran by the South African government, right, recently just revised the data again, right, to about 209, right, trillion cubic feet of shale gas that is found in the Karoo Basin, right? Now, to give you an idea on the amount of gas that is, right? When we look at the gas currently used in South Africa, it's particularly from Mozambique, right? Now, Sasol, right, accesses gas from Mozambique through pipelines, right, and various technologies, and then brings it to South Africa. Now, those gas fields in the south of Mozambique, I think it's known as the province of Tembe, right, had about 3.5 trillion cubic feet available in the gas fields. Now, I'm not talking about the northern gas fields which were discovered recently in Mozambique, right? I'm speaking of the gas field which Sasol had access to, I would say, for the past more than 50 years, I think from the 60s, right? And Sasol was the main supplier of this gas, right? That gas was about 3.5 trillion cubic feet. Now, with 3.5 cubic feet, Sasol managed to do what he's been able to do currently, right? Basically industrialize South Africa. So now, if you have about 200, let's say minimum 209 trillion cubic feet, right? It means you can have a number of Sasols that can be built in this country, right? Basically, a government geologist was recently interviewed, and he basically mentioned that what Sasol has done, right, basically with 1 trillion cubic feet, right, of gas, right, it was able to supply South Africa with gas for about 25 years. Now, those gas fields in Mozambique are approaching their life cycle, the end of their life cycle, and South Africa yet again finds itself in a position where it needs to have access to gas, right? Now, when we look at this gas, right, the main problem or the main contention with the availability of gas and the accessibility of that gas in this country is fundamentally the pollution, number one, the air pollution that it can produce, number one. Number two, it's particularly contaminating the groundwater, right, that is found in the Karoo Basin. Now, the gas in the Karoo Basin is about 2.5 kilometers to 4 kilometers below the ground, right? Now, usually the water that we use for drinking and basically human usage, right? We basically use water that is within 100 meters from the surface. So, average borehole basically is not deeper than 100 meters, right? And now the gas is way deeper than 100 meters. Now, the technology has come about that you can actually drill and seal the hole in such a way that nothing comes into the borehole or nothing goes out, right? You can use the sealing using cement and basically steel pipes, right, to make sure that any substance that you are drilling for doesn't leak outside uh, to doesn't leak, right, to actually pollute the air. Now, when we look at the structure of underground water, right, there's a number of water tables that are found underground, right? As I said, mostly for drinking water and human used water, right? Water used by humans. We access that water mainly from rivers, right? And a water table that is not at a depth that is more than 100 meters. Now, Shell was drilling and it actually also discovered that at a depth of about 4 kilometers, that's about 4,000 meters, right? There is an excess of a water table that has brackish water, right? Water that is filled with bacteria and things, and basically a dirty water, brackish water. Now, the companies are proposing that we can drill for this brackish water, right? And then purify it and then use that water to actually, in part of accessing the gas, right? So basically, there are engineering solutions in regards to accessibility of water. Now, South Africa is a country that is water scarce, right? It is a very water scarce country, and I would understand why people would have a problem in using large amounts of water to access gas, and that might actually contaminate their own borehole water, groundwater, right? So basically, in regards to water, there we don't have to panic much, right? Now, one of the most controversial issues in regards to this is using a method of accessing this gas, which is basically known as fracking or hydraulic fracturing, right? Basically, on how this method works is that you first drill a vertical hole, right? A vertical borehole, right? And then you change the direction of the drilling to horizontal using something called directional um, directional drilling, right? Now, After drilling, right, we take water, mix it with sand and a few chemicals, right? And then we pump this water in the borehole that we have drilled, right? At high pressure. Now, when you pump this water at high pressure, number one, it goes deep underground and then it basically forces itself between the cracks of rocks, right, where the gas is trapped. Then, right, the chemicals basically help to, number one, kill the bacteria that is found down there, right? Number two, the chemicals also help in helping to compress the water, right? And then number three, it is basically used to also dissolve minerals which are found deep underground. So when you pump water, right, and force it through these small cracks, the sand keeps the cracks open so that the gas can be released, or the oil, right, can be released and then pumped back up to the surface so that it can be purified and contained and then sold for profit, right? Now, the amount of water which would be needed, for example, for one well would be about 8 million liters. That's about the same amount of water that about 65,000 to 70,000 people use, right? And then you mix with this water with sand, right? Several thousand tons of sand, right? Now, this mixture, I think, is about 99%, right, of the composition of the mixture that you actually pump into the ground, right? Now, the fracking process, or the hydraulic fracturing, right, basically has a leakage percentage of about 3%. So if you were to extract a certain amount of gas from underground using this method, about 3% of the gas, mostly in methane form, right, will leak. Now, about 60% of all new oil or gas wells are using this method to access their oil and gas. Now, just an example of the level of endowment, right, that would, just to give you an idea of the level of endowment that exists in South Africa. South African geologists have just recently drilled in a town, I think in the Western Cape, called Bedford, right? And they had discovered about 8 um, trillion cubic feet of natural gas, or natural shale gas, right? Now, basically, what this means, right? It means you would have about the capacity to build 8 Sasol like companies, and they would be able to run for more than 50, for over 50 years, right? Now, Sasol, the whole entire operation of Sasol, you'd say for over 25 years equaled about 1 trillion cubic feet. Now you basically have 8 Sasols, right, that can be produced in a small town like Bedford. So the potential to defeat poverty and inequality and unemployment, right, in regards to the availability of gas in South Africa is huge. Now, another potential gas discovery in South Africa resides on offshore, right? Both the west side of South Africa, right, where it's close to Namibia, right, can have a potential of gas, and also the east of South Africa. So now when we look at Mozambique, the gas discoveries in Mozambique and Tanzania, right, give us confidence that there might actually be gas in places like offshore KZN, right, or Eastern Cape, right? The same potential also exists in the western side of the country, offshore, right? Because when you look at the discovery of oil and gas by Namibia and Angola, there is just an exciting opportunity to discover gas in the western side of South Africa. I see gas as a serious game changer in regards to our economic problems, especially our energy problems, our electricity problems. This will be able to reduce our energy cost by a very drastic margin, right? So, without any more facts, I'd like to thank you for this opportunity, and I'll see you in the next video.